Hello everybody, today on a review I have a camera I was very anxious to review, and that is Canon EOS 6D Mark II. The main reason why I was so eagerly awaiting this camera is the fact I am a long-term user of the original 6D model, which came out on the market in what is now a very distant 2012. Canon had 5 years to perfect the successor, the Mark II, so let's take a look what is new and what is changed.
The main reason why I would buy the 6D Mark II is this articulated screen. It was like I just discovered fire when I started using this screen compared to 5D Mark IV. There are many situations if you record video where you don't go all the way down, you just have to place the camera like this and hold it steadily, and you don't have to watch like this at the screen, you just have the screen here. And you can pinch the zoom, or you can just autofocus because it has dual pixel autofocus, and of course you can shoot video selfies. Before I had to put an external screen on 5D Mark IV. Now I have I just flip the screen and basically that's it.
Ergonomics is perfect. I always found Canon cameras to be ergonomically better than many competitors. All dials and buttons are on logical places, easy to reach and provide solid feedback when used. Grip shape is also perfect, big enough for comfortable grip, yet not massive like the case with 5D series. One of the main reasons why you should buy a big DSLR like this compared to some small mirrorless is the fact all the controls are very big and easy to find even with the gloves in the winter. On the backside, the LCD screen has 3 inches diagonal and perfect viewing angles and perfect viewing quality. It is fully articulated, which is great for vlogs, so you can see yourself while you are filming.
The problem with display on 6D Mark II is that it doesn't feature an automatic brightness sensor. So if you're outdoors on very bright sunlight like this, you won't be able to see on this display. On the other side, 5D Mark IV has an automatic brightness sensor, and you can see that in the same situation you will be able to monitor the LCD display. When I first got it in my hands, it felt a little bit smaller than 5D Mark IV and a little bit lighter.
This LCD also has touch interface, and I'd like to point out touch interface works for all camera functions. You can change focus points, you can use main menu, quick menu, playback, you can zoom into images with 2 fingers like on smartphone, and so on. All of this is actually expected from any modern camera, but sadly there are cameras that do not work in such a way. For example, Sony Alpha 7, Alpha 9, they simply do not work for the menu system and so on. Canon Touch Control works for every aspect of the camera. Optical viewfinder is big and bright. This is to be expected from any full-frame camera. What I especially like is the fact you can now overlay different informations inside the viewfinder. For example, on the old 6D model, if you wanted to get grid lines, which would help you in framing a shot, you had to buy a different focusing screen and physically exchange the focusing screen. On this new 6D Mark II, this feature can be enabled in the menu system, so the camera displays grid lines inside the viewfinder. Also, if you plan to shoot any other aspect ratio beside the native 3:2, for example, wide 16:9 or square format 1:1, this optical viewfinder also shows grids to help you to frame images in those aspect ratios.
Menu system is pretty easy to use as it is on all other Canon cameras. You have different colors for different menus. And I particularly like the way this looks on Canon. It's very easy to use.
6D Mark II is powered by a well-known LP-E6N battery. This is the same battery that is used in many other Canon cameras, so if you have more of them, they can all be used with the same battery, and you only need to carry one charger. Other cameras that support this battery are, for example, the old 62, 7D series, 5D Mark II, Mark III, Mark IV, 70D, 80D, and probably many others. On the left side you can see connectors. 6D Mark II has mini USB 2.0 and HDMI output. I would rather see USB 3.0, but Canon thinks USB 2.0 is enough. Also there is a 3.5mm input for external microphone. Also what I find lacking is 3.5mm output for monitoring headphones, which would be very nice when recording videos so you can monitor sound quality. There is one thing though I like to point out, and that is the fact how the connectors are placed regarding the LCD. As you can see, microphone input is far away from the LCD, so when the microphone is plugged in you will be able to completely articulate LCD and it will not get stuck on the microphone cable. SD memory card slot is on the right side. This camera has only one slot. It supports standard SD memory cards. Of course, I recommend getting the very fast ones, especially if you plan recording videos. Some users think this camera should have two memory cards, especially those who, for example, shoot weddings, because they want to have backup on two memory cards at the same time, but Canon believes this feature is reserved only for high-end models like 7D and 5D Mark IV. New feature on the 6D Mark II compared to the old 6D is the 45 AF point autofocusing system. This is basically the same system from 80D. It works without problems. All of the 45 focus points are of the cross type, which means it works quite well in low light. Also, I'd like to point out the central focus point is better than all the others. It can focus down to -3 EV, which means this camera is capable of perfectly focusing in extremely low light, so low, in fact, I am having problem seeing what's in front of me. If you shoot sports, this camera is also much better than the original 6D. Original was able to shoot at 4.5 frames per second and had quite a low buffer. This one shoots at 6.5 frames per second. You can fit, I think, 20-something RAW images and well over 150 if you shoot in JPEG format.
Photo quality hasn't changed from the previous 6D model. Basically, it's the same what you get from a camera that is 5 years old.
So now it's time to try how the 6D Mark II works in low light. I am recording video at ISO 12800, and from what I see from LCD, this is completely clean. Of course, there will be some noise when I review the footage on PC monitor, but from what I've seen before, this is significantly better than the 6D original. In my opinion, 6D Mark II is completely usable for video at ISO 12800. Also, I noticed dual pixel also works exceptionally well in low light. It is almost as equally as fast as in good light. Just out of curiosity, I will try Canon 80D with APS-C sensor. Once again, I am recording ISO 12800 video, and I can already see on the LCD screen there is a lot of noise in this footage. So if you're thinking between 80D and 6D Mark II, APS-C versus full frame sensor, and you often record video in low light, it is definitely worth it to upgrade to 6D Mark II and full frame sensor. As for the downsides, there are two things that come to my mind. Number one, that is the lack of 4K video. I know what you will say, not everybody needs it, and most of the videos online on YouTube actually end up only in Full HD. But 4K is not here only because of resolution. When you have 4K video, you can crop, you can have high quality zoom down to full HD resolution, and you can also use it for image stabilization. Canon gives you 4K video only 5D Mark IV, so if you decide to take 6D Mark II, well, what you have, you have. There's nothing to do about it. Second thing I think it is wrong with this camera is the image quality. Not in a sense that there's something wrong with it, but the very fact that it hasn't changed anything compared to the first 6D from 2012. As far as I have seen, image quality is basically identical to original 6D, which is 5 years old. Actually, in some aspects it is slightly worse. For example, dynamic range is slightly worse if you will do a lot of shadow recovery. 6D Mark II will perform slightly worse than the original 6D. Of course, this only matters for photography. If you are going to shoot videos, overall it is much better camera than the original 6D.
The only thing that I really dislike is the fact that it doesn't have a joystick here, so you cannot move through the menus, and this is really irritating after using 5D Mark IV. The interesting thing is that 6D Mark II is pretty comparable to 80D. Basically, these are two the same cameras. 6D Mark II is a full frame, and this is an APS-C size sensor, but they both have articulated displays. They both have dual pixel autofocus. These are pretty similar cameras, but if you're on full frame, you're gonna be buying, I guess, 6D Mark II. Before I bought this camera, I was using 5D Mark II, and I had a 5D Mark IV, an additional 5D Mark IV. So with this camera, I changed my 5D Mark II as a second or third camera, and the ISO, dynamic range, and everything is just superb compared to the 5D Mark IV. When I was shooting with 5D Mark IV and 5D Mark II, the picture on the same settings was very different. Now it's not anymore.
There are several things I really like about this camera. Number one, that is ease of use. This is the case with all Canon cameras, but I think 6D Original and this Mark II are particularly good examples of this. All the major functions are outside, drive, ISO, exposure metering and stuff like that. It is really easy to adjust and set up these cameras. Menus are easy, there is quick menu, touch screen to use it, really easy camera to set. Once you do that, everything you need to do is just to focus and take excellent images. And when talking about excellent images, if you haven't used full frame until now, maybe you should really try. This camera not only is very good at low ISO settings, you can use it in extremely dark conditions, ISO 12,000, 20,000, you will get really clean images. There will be some minor noise, but this is completely usable at highest ISO settings. Third thing I think really stands out on Canon's EOS 6D Mark II is video recording. Thanks to dual pixel autofocusing system and articulated touch LCD, it is really exceptionally easy to make videos. I think this is one of the best vlogger cameras on the market. All you have to do is guide the focusing on the screen, and that's it. You can get excellent footage, very shallow depth of field thanks to full frame sensor. So in my opinion, this is one of the best vlogging cameras and easiest to use vlogging cameras on the market. Thank you guys for watching. I'd like to see your comments about this camera below in the comment section, and till the next time, goodbye.